Interestingly, I record all the Vocal Point albums in my home, and typically it's in a closet. Kind of really similar to this, but I found a couple certain things to do to make it so that you can get it to sound super professional. I use a program called Pro Tools. They typically call Pro Tools an industry standard recording program, meaning that if you want to get into recording, that's the program, one of the programs to learn. Pro Tools is what I use. One of the most important things about recording the style of music that Vocal Point does, this kind of contemporary a cappella style, is to find a space that is dead. In other words, there's not a lot of echo, there's not a lot of external noise, it just is really quiet. Because what we do with Vocal Point is we have each guy come in individually and record their part by themselves, rather than have everyone huddled around one microphone. So we have each guy come in, and if each guy can come into a space that's dead and all you're getting is their pure sound, you can get it really loud and you can do lots of crazy things to it, and it doesn't manipulate it in a bad way. If there's an occasional tuning thing or an occasional rhythm thing that we need to adjust, if the room is dead, if the room doesn't have any external noise, we can make those adjustments. But if there's a heater going or an air conditioning fan, or you hear the computer kind of clicking or whatever, it's a lot harder to make those adjustments. So the recording space needs to be, I call it dead, and then that'll allow you to get the best sound. Now, in terms of the equipment to use, microphones, preamps, and whatnot, most of the microphones that I currently use with Vocal Point are what they call condenser microphones, which require phantom power to use. So you buy the microphone and then you plug it into an external source called a preamp that kind of shoots power into it, shoots this phantom power in. And it allows the mic to be heard, and allows it to be digitized and get into your computer and whatnot. The mic I use is called a Blue, the company's Blue, and it's called a Bluebird. And it's a great vocal mic for male voices. For the beatbox, I use a Shure, what is it called, an SM7B. It's what Michael Jackson recorded Thriller on. And it's a really warm, picks up kind of those deeper frequencies that you need when you're doing beatbox stuff. But a lot of that technical stuff kind of comes later on as you kind of get into it. But the most important thing, the thing I see, the biggest problem I see with recordings, with people kind of first starting is that they're not in a dead space and they don't keep that sound right on the microphone. And so if you can kind of get that, you can make a lot of stuff sound really, really good, even if your microphone's not super expensive and whatnot. If you can get a dead space, and they call it the sound to noise ratio is good, meaning that you're keeping the vocal right by the microphone, so you're not hearing the room and you're not hearing anything else except for the pure voice. You can do a lot of really great stuff with it. And like I say, I record most of the Vocal Point stuff in my home closet, and you'd never know because it sounds really great. So not necessarily, how much money you have, but just if you know the right way to do it, you can kind of make it sound great. So in terms of distance from a microphone, it kind of depends on the singer, but for me and my personal style, I really like my singers in the studio to be like no more than 3 fingers away from the microphone. I really like that close sound. Occasionally, if they've got a really loud section, I'll have them lean back. But for the way that we do kind of the contemporary thing and the setup in the dead space, having it close just allows a really rich warmth that I really, really like in the studio. And it also allows you to get all the high, happy frequencies naturally without having to add a lot of that after the fact. So you can adjust what they call gain, or kind of the volume of how much how do you say it? How much sound is coming in from the singer's voice on this preamp that I was telling you about. If it's turned down low, then they can be singing into it really loud and only a little bit will come. And if you turn up the gain, then a lot will come in. And so before each singer, I will have them do a test, and they'll sing kind of their loudest moments and their softest moments, and I'll adjust the gain to find kind of a happy medium for that person so that they can perform comfortably and naturally and do their thing while being semi-close to that microphone. So yeah, I'm a huge believer that the closer you can be, the better, just because, I mean, you don't want to cover the sound and get weird, but the closer it is, the more you can kind of pick up the natural tones that you would hear if you're listening right next to them. The further you are, the thinner it sounds, the more you start to hear the room. In a sense, you start to hear if you're recording in a small room or a big room, because, for example, if I clap in certain, if I'm in a big, huge place, the echo will be forever big. And if I clap in a room like this, you can tell it's kind of a more closed off area. And so the further away from the mic I get, the more I start to hear that room. And you don't want to hear that. You want to be able to do all of that after in post. And so the closer you are, just the better. In terms of the post-production, the program I use to adjust pitch and tempo is called Melodyne. And basically it allows you to take, now it can be polyphonic, but typically the best results are in a monophonic sounds like one single voice or a single violin or something like that. And you put it into this program and it puts it on a grid for you. And if there are any sort of pitch adjustments you want to make or any rhythm adjustments, someone came in a tiny bit too late, you can kind of nudge it, or if someone's saying this note a little flat, you can kind of push it up a little bit. A lot of people use a thing called auto-tune, which kind of just snaps it to the closest pitch. And auto-tune is something that a lot of popular music uses nowadays. It's a sound people are really used to. In a cappella, sometimes because there's so many voices, if you use auto-tune, it gets to sound really like plasticky or metallic, like almost like lasers, and so it doesn't sound as good to my ears. And so Melodyne allows it to be much more natural because you only select the little moments that are out of tune or out of rhythm, and you just adjust those. And so I go through every single part, every single moment of every part, and I'll make sure that it's just the way it needs to be and make sure that it sounds really natural and in a way that'll be pleasing to the listener that's listening or whatever. In terms of like the final mix and adding the reverb and the effects and the compression and whatnot, I actually don't do the final mix for Vocal Point. I record it all. Typically I'll arrange it, we'll record it, and I'll edit it all and get it to a place to where I feel comfortable sending it to our mixing engineer. And we have a couple of different guys that we use, and then they will kind of put the final effects on it. I'll tell them, I want it to sound like it's really big, or I want it to sound really intimate, or I want it to sound really electronic, or I want it to sound like we're standing in a circle. And so then they will take those kind of guidelines and add the reverb and add the EQ and the compression or any sort of, extra effects that we want to put into a particular song. And I found, again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, if you can surround yourself with people who are really good at what they do, the thing that you do becomes better because they're really good at that. So if you're really good at this and they're really good at this, you're just kind of combining forces to put together a really great product. So yeah, I get it to a point to where I feel really good about it, and then I send it to a guy, and he does kind of the final effects and processing, and then we send it to iTunes and let people listen to it.